differential equation from tk to tk plus 1. So we divide our interval t0 plus kh into several subdivisions, and we integrate our equation from tk to tk plus 1 from the left and from the right hand side. So to the left, it is x of tk plus 1 minus x of tk, and to the right we can approximate our integral in right hand side as h, that is the difference between tk plus 1 and tk multiplied by f of tk h of tk. So far, this approximation gives us following discrete equation. Let's see, does this method works. For example, let us discretize the Verhulst equation. As usual, A is greater than 0, L is greater than 0, and we are trying to find the discrete analog for equation 45. So when we use this method, we get these from the left-hand side and these from the right-hand side. And finally, the discrete equation takes, just a moment, takes this form. We can rewrite it to clarify. So x of tk plus 1 is a just one plus AH minus x of tk divided by L. So, is it an appropriate equation or not? We can analyze the right-hand side, and we can see that the quantity can become negative if x of tk is big enough. So if x of tk is greater than L1 plus AH divided by quantity divided by AH, then the next solution will be negative. So far, since it is negative, we can conclude that the biological sense of our equation disappears. So this equation doesn't work properly. That's why we need some another idea to discretize our equation. And we have one. So we can divide our Verhulst equation by n, left and right hand side. Then we can integrate from tk to tk plus 1. The integration in the left-hand side give us logarithm n of t k plus 1 minus logarithm n of tk. So far, when we calculate the exponent of the left and from the right-hand side, we get in the left, we get the fraction of n of tk plus 1 minus n of tk, and an exponent from the right-hand side. So far, the discrete equation takes the following form. And as in the previous situation, we can approximate the integral at exponent as simply the product of median value of integral by the integration period. So since tk plus 1 minus tk is h, we get the approximation in this form. And now we can see that since the exponent is always positive, we get an appropriate equation for n of tk. So this way works better, and we can conclude that for any initial values, all the solutions have sense. And to the next, we can calculate equilibriums in this equation. So for discrete case, the equation for equilibriums is n is n exponent ah1 minus n divided by L. We can see that the first equilibrium is a trivial one, is n equal to 0. And the second, if n is L, then our exponent becomes 1, and a left-hand side is equal to right-hand side. So we have two equilibriums as in a continuous case, the same. Let us analyze the stability of our equilibriums using their linearization. So we denote x equal to n minus L. And we calculate the linear approximation for our discrete equation. The linear approximation near the equilibrium x n equal to L, near this one. Using Taylor series expansions, we can rewrite the exponent in the left-hand side into series. And finally, we get x tk plus 1 is 1 minus ah x of tk plus something of the second order. And then all the following sum contains of terms of increasing degree, so square, cube, and so on. So we can, when we linearize the equation, we neglect these high order terms, and finally only these terms take the influence near the equilibrium. So this is our linear approximation. Using the previous result, we analyze the sign of 1 minus AH. So we can say that this is 1 minus AH. And comparing 1 minus AH with -1, 0, and 1, finally, we can conclude that our equilibrium state L will be stable if AH is less than 2. If AH is greater than 1, greater than 0 but less than 1, then it is monotonically stable. And if it is from 1 to 2, the stability is oscillatory. What does it mean? It's quite natural that when we, so we can rewrite it as, so we compare H with 0, 1 divided by A, and 2 divided by A. If H becomes greater than 2 divided by A, then the integration step becomes too large, and therefore the linearized system loses their feature of stability. If H is small, from 0 to 1 divided by A, then the equilibrium is monotonically stable. So all the solutions that are close to equilibrium are going to the equilibrium. And if H is between 1 divided by A and 2 divided by A, then this stability is oscillatory, and so it still goes to equilibrium, but with some oscillations. We can say that it is a general situation when we linearize, when we discretize a continuous equation. If the integration step H is small, then we usually see that discrete analog have the same features. But when H becomes bigger and bigger, then the dynamic of the equation becomes more interesting and become more far from the dynamic of a continuous equation. But still, we have to understand that there are different approximation ways, and when we have a continuous system or equation and we want to discretize it, we have to check these basic principles. For example, the main principle that the next solution must be positive. So what is next? What is next? The next part is bifurcations. And we can see that the bifurcations that happen in continuous equations can be seen in discrete case. The only difference between continuous and discrete equation is this hk that we add at the right-hand side. For example, in continuous case, we have an equation x dot is mu minus x squared. Here we have an equation x dot is mu x minus x square, and for pitchfork, x dot is mu x minus x cubed. So the idea of bifurcation analysis is absolutely the same. So we find our equilibriums, we analyze their stability, and we see what's happening with these equilibrium points when we change coefficient mu. So you can do it by yourself, but the result is absolutely, maybe not absolutely the same, but all the technique of analyzing each of equilibrium positions is the same. Next one. The discrete equations have a very interesting thing that is called n-period solution. What does it mean? Let us suppose that we have a discrete equation with some function f of xk. The steady state satisfy the equation xs is f of xs. So the solution is xk is xs. So if we try to draw it, the solution is going this way. So here is x, xs, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So here, xk. It is an equilibrium, but in discrete equations, there is a situation when, and we have seen it, it's a usual situation. So k, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, when the solution, oh, just a moment. The solution goes from one solution to another. Like this. So this motion also can be stable or unstable. And we still can analyze it. Sometimes the solutions that are close to our two-period solution can be stable, and sometimes they can be unstable. So the two-period solution satisfies the following equation. So it's quite natural, as xk plus 1 is f of xk, then xk plus 2 is f of xk. So far, if xk is xk plus 2, like this, like these even and odd numbers, then the equation xs is f of xs must be valid. And in general case, the n-period solution must satisfy the last equation. What is next? We can consider an equation and with some parameter, and we'll see what's going on when we change this parameter. For example, there is a chaotic motion in the following equation. So let xk plus 1 is negative xk minus mu xk plus xk cubed. So what do we see? If mu is negative, then there is a stable zero solution. Then when mu is negative and it is small, if mu becomes positive, then there are 3 unstable equilibriums. And with the further increase of mu, we get the very strange picture. This one. So when mu is less than 2, there is only one stable solution. When we increase mu, there are 2 period solutions. Then with further increase of our mu, there are 4 period solutions like this. And with further increase, the motion of our equation becomes absolutely chaotic. And we have no ideas what is the final result with any given initial position. It's an interesting situation because it means that, for example, we can use these discrete equations to generate pseudo random numbers because the final result with the increase of the k is absolutely unpredictable. And for some of the equations, it is proved that the solutions are evenly distributed. So one can generate a pseudo-random number using the discrete equation. It's an interesting thing because there is nothing similar in continuous equations. So this feature is called a period doubling. What more we can stress here? There are aperiodic solutions, and the butterfly effect occurs. So the initial condition is very sensitive. There is a sensitive dependence on the initial conditions, and the small change of this initial condition give us huge difference in the final result, and the final motion of the equation becomes absolutely unpredictable. And these equations are really very close to our biological and ecological equations. So this chaotic motion can be seen in the real life if we consider some insect population and so on. Next one. Let us analyze a bit more deeply the discrete logistic equation. In this form. it is very close to our Verhulst equation, but we analyze it just because it is very simple to analyze. So it's not that good because sometimes the equations, the solutions can become negative. It can happen here, but the equation is very easy to analyze. We can do it mathematically, but not numerically. The equation with exponent is better from biological point of view, but we can analyze it only numerically. So xk is the population number. And r is a value from 0, 4. When we usually consider r as the average number of children at the population, so it's quite natural for animals from 0 to 4. It's okay. So we can, so if it is the f of xk, we can analyze it. We can find the equilibriums. Let's do it. First of all, the equation for equilibriums is in this form. So the first equilibrium is S0, 1. And the second one is from the equation R1 minus X is 1. So X is 1 minus X is 1 divided by R. X is 1 minus 1 divided by R, or the same R minus 1 divided by R. So we have two equilibriums in this situation if R is greater than 1. So if R is less than 1, then we have only one trivial equilibrium. Well, two equilibriums. So let us find the eigenvalue that is f prime of equilibrium. What is our f prime? It is Rx minus Rx square prime. So it is R minus 2Rx. Or the same R 1 minus 2x. And we compare this value with -1, 0, and 1. So when we compare the f prime with these three values, we get different R for different equilibriums. First of all, let us apply x equal to 0. So if x equals to 0, for the trivial equilibrium, f prime is just R, and it is stable if R is less than 1. If R is less than 1. So for the very first situation, for small r, we have only one equilibrium at it, and it is stable. So the population disappear. This is the bad option. Next one, if R is 1 minus 1 divided by R, f prime is R 1 minus 2, 1 plus 2 divided by R. It is R multiplied by 2 divided by R minus 1. And we compare it with -1, 0, and 1. So far, for our non-trivial equilibrium, we get the following results. So the first one we have seen with R from 0 to 1, the population will eventually die. And it does not depend on the initial population. Next one. If R is from 1 to 2, the population will quickly approach the stable equilibrium R minus 1 divided by R. Next, when we increase our coefficient furthermore, the population will eventually approach to our equilibrium, but first it fluctuates around it. There are some oscillations, but finally the solution converges to equilibrium. And we can conclude that rate of this convergence is linear. So the solutions look like there is our equilibrium. So these are our oscillations, and the speed of decreasing of the oscillations is linear. For example, not exponential, but linear. And for R equal to 3, the speed of convergence becomes less than linear. So it converges, but very, very small, very slow. And next, when we increase R furthermore, then we can't use our linear approximation. We just can do some numerical calculations. And we can see that from almost all initial conditions, the populations will approach to oscillations between two values. What does it mean? It means that when R from 3 to 3.44, there are stable two-period solutions. Then, with further increase of our R, there are oscillations among 4 values. So the period doubling begins, and we can see that these span between 2-period solutions, 4-period solutions, and so on is very short. So with further increase of R, we can see the period doubling between 8 values, 16 values, 32 values, and so on. And so on. And we can see this period doubling with further increase of our coefficient R. And very quick after period doubling, quickly after period doubling, absolutely chaotic motion begins. And we can analyze this chaotic motion only in terms of statistics. But still there are some interesting areas with big R. For example, in this region, the chaotic motion stops, and at that moment there is only 3 possible solutions. And we can see the density of solutions on this plot. So the probability to see the solution in this region is higher than in this region, for example. So what do we see? When R is from 2 to 3, this is our stable equilibrium. 1 minus 1 divided by R. This equilibrium is stable. Then, with further increase of R, there is a stable 2-period solution. Then 4-period solution and very quick period doubling interval, and then we see the chaotic motion. And when R becomes more than 4, the solutions become negative. So the system loses all the biological meaning from that moment. So what is next? Let us consider an insect population, and using all these technique developed, we're gonna understand what's going on with our insect populations. We'll consider the one simple model of insects. We understand that the insects have annual non-overlapping generations. So the generations of mothers, bees, never see the generation of their kids. So when the kids hatch out from eggs, the mothers and fathers always are dead, all of them. So the generations are non-overlapping, and we have to use discrete equation for this situation. So what about the insects? The adults lay eggs in spring or summer, and then they die. The eggs hatch out into larvae, which eat and grow. Then there is a pupal stage in overwinter, and then the adults emerge from this pupal stage in spring. So we have to decide what time of the year we will take into account. For example, we can take into account the number of adults at the breeding season. And we introduce the very useful coefficient that is derived by R0, and it is the average number of eggs laid by one adult. So in ideal situation, when all the offspring survive, we will have the equation in this form: xk plus 1 is R0 and k. That's why our R0, we understand that it must be greater than than 1. Otherwise, the population will die very quickly. It's quite natural. So we call our R0 as basic reproductive ratio. Basic reproductive ratio. And in general case, we define it as the average number of offsprings that are produced over a lifetime. Maybe you have seen this basic reproductive ratio when we speak about coronavirus. The infection model are close, and we can use the same R0. So for coronavirus model, it is the average number of people that can be infected by one infected individual. So it is the ideal situation. We understand that not all the offspring survives. That's why we must change. We must take into account some deductions from our environment. So let us use the function s of nk, depending on nk for sure, and we must see that it will be less than 1 usually. So in we can rewrite the equation in the general form, this or this one. Here, function big F is per capita production, and F of n is the production of the population of size n. So these models are called density dependent. If the function f depends on n, we usually consider density dependent functions, that it is not the constant. Well, what about possible functions f of n? So we can take into account different forms of interspecific competition, since S depend on n, and S depends on the actual population. It means that it reflects the interspecific competition. So far, there can be 3 different possible competition types. First one, no competition. No competition, then S of n is always 1 for any n. No competition. But usually in the real life, we always see some competition. That's why it is just an idealization. Next one, contest competition. What does it mean? A contest competition. We can see the situation when there is a finite number of units of resources. For example, it is the fixed number of safe refugees, or something like this. So each individual which obtains one of these units of resources survives to breed and produces all R0 offsprings. And all others, they just are dying without producing offsprings. So far, the function S of n n, S of n. So there is some critical number, n critical, n critical. Our S of n is always 1 when there is enough these units of food, and after our NC, the number start decreasing like this. So S of n is NC divided by n for n greater than NC. So far, the production, if the population is less than NC, then it is R0 multiplied by n, and then it is NC multiplied by R0. So then, if we consider nk plus 1, it goes this way. The function goes this way, nk. So here it is our n critical. It is the contest competition. So the contest for resources. Then there is another type of the competition is called scramble competition. That means that every individual have an equal share of limited resources. So far, if the resources amount is enough for survival, then all survive and produce R0. If not, all of them dies. That's why our function S of n is a 1 for n less than some critical value, and it is 0 for n greater than nc. So it is a 1 before nc and 0 after nc. And the same with production. So the production is this, and 0 after exceeding nc. It is the situation when, for example, we are trying to feed all the offsprings. So we share the resources, and sometimes when the resources are not enough, then all our population will die. So on the next step, there will be no population at all. We can see something like this in economics. Look, for example, there is a crisis when we can help to some companies. If we try to save all companies, we'll share the money between them, and if these money are not enough, all of them will go to bankrupt. So far, the clever situation means that we have to pick some part of the population that will survive, and we have to share their resources at this part of the population. Otherwise, all the population will die. But in the real life, usually we have the combination of all of these competition types. The contest competition, scramble competition. So there are no steps like in scramble competition. 0 or 1, it is not good from biological point of view. So a good model that takes into account all of these features is given by Hessel equation, an equation 49. R0 and A are positives, and B is also positive. What is the meaning of our B? If B is 0, then it is just maltose growth. There is no competition at all. If B is from 0 to 1, we call it undercompensation. When B is 1, we call it exact compensation. And if B is greater than 1, we call it an overcompensation. If B is going to infinity, we call it a scramble competition. We can see that if B is very large, then when nk becomes greater some value, the power a plus 1 plus a and k to the bth power becomes will quickly grow, and all the fraction becomes 0. becomes 0. So we can analyze our equation using the technique discussed above. First of all, we can reduce the number of parameters by defining xk is a and k. We see that there is an exact proportion, and we can just neglect a. So far, the equation we analyze is in the form 50. There is only two coefficients here, R0 and B. And both of them are positive. So using the developed technique, we can find equilibriums, and we can analyze their stability. So there is a lot of calculations, but I don't want to focus on them because they are quite simple. So we just calculate f prime, and we compare it with, first of all, we find equilibriums. It's quite easy. So the equation for equilibriums is x is R0x 1 plus x to the bth power. So the first equilibrium is a trivial one, and the second from the equation R0 is 1 plus x to the bth power. So from the last equation, we get the coordinates of our non-trivial equilibrium. And we can see that if R0 is less than 1, there is no non-trivial steady-state solutions. So for this case, the trivial steady state is stable. For well, it's just understandable, because if every one of our population produce less than one offsprings, then the population will die in any case. It's quite evident from biological point of view. And if R0 is greater than 1, then sometimes there can be the population can exist, and the population can stabilize near this equilibrium. So, so the trivial solution is oscillatory unstable, oscillatory stable, or monotonically unstable, according to whether f prime is in our intervals. So this line, as usual, f prime of so far we have to find we have to find the values of our coefficients that give us different parts of the line. So let us calculate f prime when x est is non-trivial equilibrium. When we calculate it, we get f prime as 1 minus b plus b multiplied by r0 to negative 1/bth power. So when we compare f prime with negative 1, 0, and 1, we get different lines or different curves in space in BR0 space. So if B is less than 1, we can conclude that R0, we can conclude that f prime is from 0 to 1, and non-trivial equilibrium is monotonically stable. And in general, we see that f prime is less than 1. So the bifurcation points are possible only when f prime of the equilibrium passes through 0 and -1. So we can compare f prime with 0, and we can compare it with -1, and we see two borderlines. The curve directed by this statement is the borderline between monotonically and oscillatory stable behavior. So that sign is changed from positive to negatives. And then the borderline between oscillatory stable and periodic behavior is this one. So here f prime cross 0, and here f prime cross -1. So we have different areas in RB space. These areas give us different dynamics of our equation. So it is our parameter space. Here, logarithm of R0. Here is B. And these lines, from monotonically stable to oscillatory stable, f prime cross cross 0. Oh. Here f prime cross 1, we can say that this is the line when f prime is 0. Here is f prime is 1. And then there is a line when the unstable, oscillatory unstable solutions becomes chaotic. And we can analyze our real populations of different insects. And we can see that the circles here are field populations. So the populations that exist in wildlife. There is a huge number of populations, and we see that all of them are in a monotonically stable region. So in the real life, the number of bees, of flies, and so on is very stable. And if, for example, we are trying to kill all of the bees, we decrease the population number, and then in a few populations, they will replenish the quantity, and it will be okay. There is only a few populations that are in unstable region, but usually it is some other effects take the influence, and for example, there is no such strong competition, intraspecific competition in these populations. And some laboratory populations are marked with crosses, like this. These are the crosses. What we can conclude here. First of all, most points are well within the stable region. It's quite natural and understandable. And some laboratory populations are less stable than field ones. It is also natural because we help to these populations, and they can be in unstable region. There is some external influence on the population amount. So the scramble for resources with high B and low density independent mortality with high R0. So point 2 is Colorado beetle. Point 2 is here. It is quite strange situation because according to this Hessel equation, the Colorado beetle is oscillatory unstable, and therefore it can be vanished for some reasons. But I think we can't analyze all our equation, all our real population with this equation. I think there are some maybe high order terms or something like this that take the influence, because the Colorado beetle have more or less stable population. There is no danger to this population, so that's okay for them, for these beetles. Yes, there are some populations that they are in stable region, but we see some periodic oscillations. But it is also that's why, because more complicated dynamics than simple self-limiting. some of the insects, there are predator-prey or host-parasitoid relationship and so on. So if we take into account, for example, the second population, that they take influence one to another, then the situation will change. And for example, predator-prey model can be stable. So every one of the population is unstable. The individual single population is unstable, but the predator-prey population becomes stable. This situation can exist. So that's all about this insect population. And let's say a few words about Fibonacci rabbits, about these multi-step systems. We can say that the equation xk plus 1 is f of xk works good if our populations do not overlap. So if all the population dies before the winter, then the next population depends only on the number of eggs. But some of insects can survive for several years. And we must take into account a bit more complicated situation. For example, xk plus 2 can be f of xk k plus 1. And here we go, the Fibonacci rabbits. And really, there is a lot of population that can be described by this formula. So we need some mathematics first. Some mathematics. So in general, we can consider the linear discrete system when Z is a vector, M is a matrix, and the Zk is a previous vector. So Zk plus 1, k plus 1 is M, is a matrix M multiplied by vector Zk. So how can we solve this system? The idea of solution is very similar to our systems of ordinary differential equations. We are trying to solve the equation in the form lambda to the kth power multiplied by vector c. So we can compare. If x dot is ax, we are trying to find the solution x is in this form. And we are going for the eigenvalue problem for lambda. And the same here. So let us apply this zk to equation 51. And then we cancel lambda to the kth power. And we get another eigenvalue problem. So we see that it is absolutely the same. The eigenvalue problem is the same. If lambda satisfy the eigenvalue equation, then there is a solution in the form lambda to the case power c. And as in continuous case, the existence of non-trivial solutions is connected with singularity of the matrix. So far, the same eigenvalue problem arise. And finally, since the eigenvalue problem is a polynomial, it have m roots for the m by m system. And finally, if all the roots are distinct or separate, we usually consider these cases when there are no equalities in the mathematical biology. So far, under these assumptions, we can see the general solution for our system of linear discrete equations. So when we analyze the linear discrete system, we can see that if all lambda are less than 1, then the solutions are going to 0 with any initial conditions. So these inequality give us the stability condition for linear discrete equation. So the same. When we compare continuous equations, real part of lambda must be negative, and discrete lambda must be less than 1. So that is our difference and similarity between both situations. For example, if we consider the case m is 2, so 2 by 2 system, the eigenvalue equation is given by this one, where A1 is a negative trace of our matrix, and A2 is the determinant. So far, the necessary and sufficient condition for asymptotic stability of all the solutions are derived by their conditions. They are called jury conditions. So in general, their idea is very close to analysis in continuous form. So on the border of these inequalities, there exists an eigenvalue with the value 1 or negative 1, and on the border there can exist unstable or stable solutions. And the same, we can derive the eigenvalue equation for m equals to 3, 4, and so on, and we can find the same conditions, the stability conditions for more complicated situations. So the same, all lambda eigenvalues lambda must do not exceed 1. We can derive it by exact formulas. So we can find we can just find the lambda I and solve for this inequality. Or there is another way. there is a function that connects the condition of stability for our continuous case and for discrete case. So if we consider a complex plane, we can find a function that reflects lambda is less than 1 into a real part of lambda is less than 1. So there is a variables change that can give us the stability we can find the variables change for this new equation. We find the well-known stability conditions for continuous case, and then we can they will be our stability conditions for discrete case. But now I would like to focus on the Fibonacci rabbits. So it is a really very, very old problem. It was published in 2002. It was formulated in the following case. A certain man put a pair of rabbits in a place surrounded on all sides by a wall. How many pairs of rabbits can be produced from that pair in a year if it's supposed that every month each pair begets a new pair, which from the second month on becomes productive? So, the equation itself is yk plus 2 is yk plus 1 plus yk with initial conditions, meaning that there is only one pair of rabbits on the first and on the next month. And for sure, we can find the solution exactly, just adding two previous solutions like this. But using the previous technique, we can find the general solution of our equation. How can we find the general solution? First of all, we have to get the system of equations instead of the equation of second order. So far, let us xk is yk plus 1. So the new system will be xk plus 1 is our yk plus 2. So it is xk xk plus yk, and yk plus 1 is xk. So the matrix, we can rewrite it. Just a moment. We can rewrite it is in this in matrix form. So xk plus 1, yk plus 1 is a matrix multiplied by xk, yk. So it is a 1, 0, 1, and 1. It is our matrix M. So far, we can find the eigenvalue problem. So it is the determinant of 1 minus lambda, 1, 1 minus lambda. It is lambda square minus lambda minus 1. So it is our eigenvalue problem. Eigenvalue problem. This one. This simple equation have following solutions. And we can find their general solutions in following form. That yk is this strange formula. And one can see that for any natural k, their result will be natural, the same. A bit strange, but it works. And these roots, these fractions are derived from initial solutions. So y0 and y1 must be 1. So we find the general solution as yk is c1 lambda 1 to the kth power plus c2 lambda 2 to the kth power, and we find this c1 and c2 from the initial conditions. And the task for you, you can calculate it and prove that c1 and c2 are these roots. These roots. Finally, what about the Fibonacci rabbit? Fibonacci rabbits. We see that if k is going to infinity, as the first root, this one is greater than 1 and this is less than 1, then this will decrease, and the solution, the final solution, is close to this. So it is close to the power with the golden ratio. We call this half of 1 plus square root of 5 a golden ratio. That's why yk plus 1 divided by yk is going to lambda 1, the golden ratio, with k is going to infinity. It can be easily proved. 2 small tasks for you. First one, give me at least 3 criticisms on Fibonacci rabbits model. And another task, is there any difference between this model and if we take into account a moment after the birth instead of just before the birth? So you can modify the Fibonacci rabbits model and see, is there any difference? Well, I think enough for our lection, and I'm ready for their presentations. There must be 4 presentations as far as I remember, right?
Yeah, I'm ready. I want to go first.
You're welcome. Oh, just a moment. Let me make a small break, 10 minutes break. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, thank you. I'm here. We can continue. Are you ready?
Okay, I can start. So, can you see my screen? Okay. Today I want to tell you about text summarization, its types, benefits and drawbacks, and some practice that I get. Every day we are confronted with huge amounts of information. When we open news sites, we do not just start reading every news article, but we typically glance at the short news summary and then read more details if interested. Or is it often necessary to read a lot of voluminous text or article or documents in a limited time? Therefore, in the field of machine learning, the task of automatically compiling a text summation was naturally born. Text summarization can be defined as the automatic creation of a summary or a title or annotation of the source text. There are two essentially different approaches to this problem: extractive methods and abstractive methods. The extractive approach consists of extracting the most significant information blocks from the source text. The block can be separate paragraphs, sentences, or keywords. The method of this approach are characterized by the presence of an evaluation function of the importance of the information block. By ranking these blocks in order of importance and choosing a predetermined number of them, we form the final summary of the text. There are many examples of an extractive approach, such as summation based on the occurrence of common words, sentence ranking, summation based on train vector representations like word-to-vec, or so on. You need to note that the summary contains exact sentences from the original text. Abstractive text summarization is a more advanced method. The approach is to identify the important sections, interpret the context, and generate a brief content with the generation of a new text that meaningfully generalizes the primary document. The main idea of this approach is that the model is able to generate an absolutely unique summary, which may contain words that are not in the source text. The output of the model is a kind of a retelling of the text in the shortest way, which is closer to the manual compilation of a summary of the text by people. Most often, neural networks are used in this case. Next, I will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each method. The main advantages of the extractive approach are the intuitive nature of the algorithm, and it's relatively easy to implement. But among the shortcomings, it can be noted that the quality of the content obtained as a result of the operation of the algorithm in many cases can be worse than manually written by a person. The advantages of the abstractive approach is that a well-implemented algorithm is able to produce a result that is closest to the manual compilation of a summary. The disadvantages may be that some of the theoretical ideas of the algorithm can be difficult to understand, and it is also quite laborious, because some initial data is needed to train the model. For example, existing headings if we want to summarize the text. It is difficult to answer the question which method will work better. Everything depends on the task. For example, an extractive algorithm is likely to be better suited for generating the content of multi-page documents, where extracting a few sentences directly from the text can really correctly convey the idea. But despite the fact at the moment abstract algorithms are poorly developed at a certain level of output quality, and can only be used to generate small summaries. I think it is neural networks methods that in the future are able to form content for absolutely any size of text. And what most importantly, the content itself will be as close as possible to the manual compilation of the summary. Okay, let's move on to the practical part. Since the summarization problem is a fairly broad problem, I will only discuss the extractive method in detail. My main goal was to compare the results of different algorithms. I considered such algorithms like Lection, also Genzim, some unknown algorithm. It is also sentence ranking like LexRank, and my algorithm. As for data that I used dataset with news available on the internet named ExcelSum that consists of already written summarization and the texts of news. You can see on the slide a histogram of text and summary length. And the mean length of the text are about 2600 symbols. And as for summaries, it is 125 symbols. Okay, my algorithm. I call it that way because I wrote it myself according to the descriptions of extractive methods. The steps are: I take the text, clear it of unnecessary characters like commas, dots, etc. Also stop words, then lematize it. That is when I single out the basis by the meaning. So it's like a rollback to the original word. I do it in order to group the same word forms. Then I remember the order of words in the text, saving tokens from the text so I can later display the result with the preservation of punctuation, capital letters, and all words. Next, I select n-grams, a sequence of several words. I take from 3 to 7 grams. I group them by repeating n-grams, rank it by its length and frequency, and select the first 10 most popular. And then send it to the function that checks if 1 gram is included in words in another, and then combine them. Thus, we find the longest chain that describes our text as much as possible. To my disappointment, my algorithm showed not entirely comforting results, although it is rather difficult and subjective to evaluate the quality of the summarization algorithm, because its output is not a sentence, but in the original summation of text, but phrases. So I don't want to go deeper in the rest of the algorithms because it would take a lot of time, but I can say I just applied them to the texts that I get and analyze the results. So to calculate which of the algorithms is better working, I use a Rouge matrix. It is recall-oriented and a study for gisting evaluation. More precisely, I use Rouge 1. It refers to the overlap a unigram, each word between the system and reference summaries. Then, some statistics. On this picture, you can see how long it took for each algorithm to process 5,000 texts. We can see that the fastest was the Genzim. Then, this is the mean F1 matrix for each algorithm. The third algorithm, also it is unknown algorithm. It is a little bit better, although the results of the rest are not very good. Further, I was interested to know whether the matrix F1 depends on the length of the text for different algorithms. Therefore, I divided the dataset into several groups according to the length of the text. Since the texts are quite different in length, it turned out to be 10 groups approximately, like you can see on the slide. Then, if we look here, where the dependence of F1 matrix of each algorithm on the length of the text is displayed, we will see that the algorithms work in approximately the same way. But on this box plot, we can see that all algorithms work faster on short texts, but the longer the text, the worse the third unknown and the LexRank work. So at the end of my research, I can say that for more efficient actions, it will be better to choose the third unknown algorithm for text up to 3,000 characters, and for more than 3,000 characters, we can use Genzim. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. And do you have the example of, well, maybe the best existing algorithm? How does it work? I understand that you are showing us maybe your diploma work, but what is the the best result all over the world?
I know that right now it is a very popular and useful algorithm is LSA, but I didn't manage to test it, so I can't say exactly.
Well, I think it will be really interesting how does it work, because well, the problem is important. We have a lot of information around us,
Yeah.
and sometimes we want to see the automatic abstract instead of a long text. Sometimes maybe in the future you can do the same with videos. For example, if you recognize the text from video and then use this algorithm, you can summarize the video just like 30 minutes of something in one phrase that, well, a guy is doing nothing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Or maybe a girl is showing her best. Something like this. So, well, it's really interesting. It's really interesting, but I think you should add the existing result, because we just want to see the initial text and to see what is the automatic, the best possible automatic abstract for now. And what about language? Does this algorithm depend on language?
Some of them are, but I choose to test it with English. So with English, it's quite good results.
So it will work with Russian, with French, and so on?
Some of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have no questions more. What about you? Maybe someone else?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Yeah, I'll be the next. So you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Good, let's start. Today I want to briefly introduce you to the Unreal Engine. First of all, what is Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine is a popular and widely used game engine, which was written on C++ and developed by Epic Games company. In addition, I want to note that this engine is also used in the film industry to create special visual effects and in interior design to make environment and show the layout to customers and builders. The third generation of Unreal Engine was developed by Tim Sweeney, the founder of Epic Games, and in 1998, and included graphics engine, a physics engine, artificial intelligence, file and network system management, and a ready-made development environment for games. Further, I'll note on the innovation of each version. In 1.5, facial animation was added. After that, fluid surface, foliage, graphics optimization. In third engine, third engine uses two parallel threads, shadows and dynamic shadows. In fourth version, optimization and new technologies of particle system and material editor were added. And in announced Unreal Engine 5 will add a new light calculation, ray tracing system in the night, and geometric Niagara system of particle interaction and some other new things. So the next step is main features of this engine. Unreal Engine features a high degree of portability, supporting a wide range of desktop, mobile, console, and virtual reality platforms. Also, there is a huge amount of documentation to help you learn the system. A big benefit to Unreal Engine is that it's completely free to use. And whether you are a hobbyist developer or AAA studio, there is no upfront free to use Unreal. They instead use a royalty agreement at 5% of all game earnings over $3,000 per quarter to make their money. And another one feature is Blueprints. It is a special programming system. However, Unreal Engine is extensible on C++, but a lot of programmers and companies use exactly this feature for its projects. What is it? Blueprints. Blueprints are blocks of code that you can add to your objects to make interaction. So you can put together simple scripts that interact with another one, and this all uses a visual interface. So even if you have never coded in your life, a few short tutorials can get you well on your way to a working game. I want to stop on this screenshot and describe. Here you can see the construction script and arrow from output of this node is to clear node. Here we clear the point cache array, and right after that we get components of first scene, and after that use cycle for. Here it is for each loop, and then if array element casts to child actor component, it means that if array element is object of this class or object of some child class, then we work further. Else cast failed, and here we do nothing. So after that we cast to cover point actor some child actor of this target and add this element to our point cache array and print the display name on our screen. Let's go further. Workflow. The content browser is an integral part of the user interface, and it allows us to quickly explore your scene's inter-file structure to find different assets and drag them straight into the viewport that you can see on the picture. Unreal Engine also has tools to create your own terrain, and you can paint it in your own materials with your mouse and blend them together to make grass and some trees, for example. And I want to know that these grass, trees, and other material and meshes which we post into our map will already optimized. Will be already optimized to run in our game if we use the blend meshes that come with Unreal Engine. The texturing and materials tools in Unreal Engine are second to none, in my opinion. The amount that included in it is incredible. We can get absolutely customized result, and here I can explain it. You can see. So actually, a beautiful part of Unreal Engine is Epic Games Marketplace, where you can buy or download for free some meshes, models, animations, scripts, plugins, and systems for your project, but not for each version of Unreal Engine and operation system. So you need to be careful and attentive during shopping here. And the most popular products, in my opinion, it's Harry Potter, but not only the Philosopher's Stones part, but all parts of this game was written on Unreal Engine. Mortal Kombat, Fortnite, Mass Effect and BioShock series, Tekken 7, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So, and in conclusion, I would like to show you the trailer of Unreal Engine 5, that you can look at realism of world details. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So I think it will be the greatest game engine in the world. Thank you for your attention. That's it.
Well, looks good. And what are the system requirements for this beautiful video?
Oh, I worked with GTX 1050 in mobile version, and it works more or less good. Not very high requirements for this engine.
So the picture looks amazing, but there is a question.
Exactly the requirements of Engine 5. Here you saw the trailer of last PlayStation version.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay, I never had a PlayStation, so no idea about it. Is it quick or not? Is it cheap or not? No ideas. Well, okay. Have you any questions?
No.
I think no.
Well, if not, who's next?
I would like to be the next.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share the screen. Can you see?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to tell you about the 5G wireless network standard. Um, so every new generation of wireless networks delivers faster speeds and more functionality to our smartphones. 1G brought us the very first cell phones. 2G let us text for the first time. 3G brought us online, and 4G delivered the speeds that we enjoy today. But as more users come online, 4G networks have just about reached the limit of what they are capable of at a time when users want even more data for their smartphones and devices. Now we're headed toward 5G, the next generation of wireless, and it will be able to handle 1,000 times more traffic than today's networks, and it will be up to 10 times faster than 4G LTE. Uh, just imagine downloading an HD movie in under a second and then let your imagination run wild. 5G will be the foundation for virtual reality, autonomous driving, the Internet of Things, and stuff we can't even imagine yet. Uh, what exactly is a 5G network? The truth is, experts can't tell us what 5G actually is because they don't even know yet. Uh, but right now, there are 5 brand new technologies emerging as a foundation of 5G. Uh, Millimeter waves, small cells, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. First up, technology number 1, millimeter waves. Our smartphone and other electronic devices in our homes use very specific frequencies on the radio frequency spectrum. Typically, those are under 6 gigahertz. But these frequencies are starting to get more crowded. Carriers can only squeeze so many bits of data on the same amount of radio frequency spectrum. As more devices come online, we're going to start to see slower service and more dropped connections. The solution is to open up some new real estate, so researchers are experimenting with broadcasting on shorter millimeter waves, those that fall between 30 and 300 gigahertz. This section of spectrum has never been used before for mobile devices, and opening it up means more bandwidth for everyone. But there is a catch. Millimeter waves can travel well through buildings or other obstacles, and they tend to be absorbed by plants and rain. To get around this problem, we'll need technology number 2, called small cell networks. Today's wireless networks rely on large high-powered cell towers to broadcast their signals over long distances. But remember, higher frequency millimeter waves have a harder time traveling through obstacles, which means if you move behind one, you lose your signal. Small cell networks would solve this problem using thousands of low power mini base stations. These base stations would be much closer together than the traditional towers, forming a sort of relay team to transmit signals around obstacles. This would be especially useful in cities as the user moved behind an obstacle, his smartphone would automatically switch to a new base station in better range of his device, allowing him to keep his connection alive. Next up, technology number 3, massive MIMO. MIMO stands for multiple input, multiple output. Today's 4G base stations have about a dozen ports for antennas that handle all cellular traffic. But massive MIMO base stations can support about 100 ports. This could increase the capacity of today's networks by a factor of 22 or more. Of course, massive MIMO comes with its own complications. Today's cellular antennas broadcast information in every direction at once, and all of those crossing signals could cause serious interference, which brings us to technology number 4, called beamforming. Beamforming is like a traffic signaling system for cellular signals. Instead of broadcasting in every direction, it will allow a base station to send a focused stream of data to a specific user. This precision prevents interference and it's way more efficient. That means stations could handle more incoming and outgoing data streams at once. Here's how it works. Say you are in a cluster of buildings and you are trying to make a phone call. Your signal is ricocheting of surrounding buildings and crisscrossing with other signals from users in the area. A massive MIMO base station receives all of these signals and keeps track of the timing and the direction of their arrival. It then uses signal processing algorithms to triangulate exactly where each signal is coming from and plots the best transmission route back through the air to each phone. Sometimes it will even bounce individual packets of data in different directions of buildings or other objects to keep signals from interfering with each other. So the result is a coherent data stream sent only to you, which brings us to technology number 5. Full duplex. If you ever used a walkie-talkie, you know that in order to communicate, you have to take turns talking and listening. That's a kind of a drag. Today's cellular base stations have that exact same hold-up. A basic antenna can only do one job at a time, either transmit or receive. This is because of principle called reciprocity, which is the tendency for radio waves to travel both forward and backward along the same frequency. To understand this, it helps to think of a wave like a train loaded up with data. The frequency is traveling on is like the train track, and if there is a second train trying to go in the opposite direction on the same track, you're going to get some interference. So the trains are going to crash. Up until now, the solution has been to have the trains take turns, like walkie-talkie, or to put all the trains on different tracks or frequencies, like in the picture below. Um, but you can make things a lot more efficient by working around reciprocity. Researchers have used silicon transistors to create high-speed switches that halt the backward roll of these waves. It's kind of like a signaling system that can momentarily reroute train to so that they can get past each other. That means there is a lot of more getting done on each track at a whole and a whole lot faster. Many of the kinks are still being worked out with millimeter waves, small cell networks, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. In fact, all of 5G is a still work in progress. It will likely include other new technologies too. And making all of these systems work together will be a whole other challenge. But if experts can figure that out, ultra-fast 5G service could arrive widely in the next couple of years. And that's all.
Uh-huh. What about the danger of 5G to human body?
I don't really believe in dangers of 5G, so I even decided not to include it in my report.
Yes, I agree. I think it is more funny than frightening.
Yeah.
This problem. First of all, because when I hear about this impact on human body, I always say that there is a source of electromagnetic field with the power like 100 watt per 1 square meter that is emitted by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So since the light is an electromagnetic wave, it doesn't look too difficult for a human body to survive these nanowatt per square meter. Or
Yeah, it's like with radiation.
Yes.
So yes, like there is always a constant level of radiation in the city.
Yes, looks funny, but well, no ideas about 5G in Russia or in general the technologies in Russia.
Actually, 1 year ago, I think last year, the operator MTS opened some testing location near Teatralnaya Square, where some users with Android could experience 5G.
So, is it a Russian technology or it is an international technology? I don't think it is our hard and soft.
Yes, I think so. The main the most wait a minute. I can say that I looked at the research, and I can say that providers like AT&T and T-Mobile are like did the most research on it. And firstly, it was it was invented in South Korea.
Yes, but still not Russia.
Yeah, still not Russia, and I think
we'll
not in the near future.
Maybe the situation will change, and well, okay, I hope. Thank you. There is one more presentation for today, right?
Yes, it is. Let me.
You can start.
Screen. Minute. Can you see screen?
Oh yeah, physics engines.
Oh, today we will talk about software for approximate modeling of physical systems, namely the physics engine. It's a computer program that provides an approximate simulation of certain physical systems, such as rigid body dynamics, soft body dynamics, and hydrodynamics, used in the field of computer graphics, video games, and films. You know it like CGI. On this slide, you can see an example of visualization of water physics. This soft mainly used in video games, usually as middleware, in which case the simulation is performed in real time. The physics engine is responsible for calculating the resulting accelerations, velocity, and displacement of an object by forces and torques acting on the body. When developing a physical engine, the most important equations are Newton's second law and formulas of rotation force. The physics engine integrates the equation of motion to obtain the resulting velocity and motion of the object. He does it in continuous cycle, which consists the following step. First, determine all the forces and moments acting on the object. Next, take the vector sum of all forces and moments. Next, solve the equation of the motion and the linear and angular acceleration. Next is integrate acceleration over time and to find the linear and angular velocity. And the next, integrate velocity over time to find linear and angular displacement. If gravitational force and torque are applied to an object, the physics engine cycle creates the illusion that the object is falling and rotating. In computers, integrals are calculated using numerical integration. The reason is that computers can only approximate the value of integral using numerical methods. There are several numerical integration methods used to solve this equation, and the most common are Euler's method, the Verl methods, and Runge-Kutta method. So the Euler method is simple to implement, but is the least accurate. And the Runge-Kutta method is difficult to implement, but it's the most accurate. Also, the physics engine is responsible for collision detection. This responsibility is delegated to the collision detection system. Both of systems work hand in hand for collision detection, and this system is only report a simple yes/no answer. What next? When the physics engine transferred object to the collision system, the objects are packaged in limited volumes. The most traditional bounding volumes are spheres, axiom-aligned bounding boxes, or AABB, and oriented bounding boxes, OBB. During the detection of white-phase collisions, each object turns into a sphere that limits the volume. The physics engine analyzed the space of each object and creates hierarchy of boundary volumes. So this hierarchy creates a tree structure in which each node contains the objects that are more likely to collide. The physics engine checks each node and creates a list of collision pairs. You can see some different situations. The broad phase pays quickly, and it can report collision with false positives. But even in the case, it removes all pairs of impossible collisions. So, of course, since all calculations are performed on a computer, it's impossible to avoid inaccuracies or errors. The main limitation of the realism physics engine is the accuracy of numbers representing position and force action on objects. When the accuracy is too low, rounding errors affect the results, and small fluctuations not modeled in simulation and can radically change the predicted result. So the simulated objects may behave unexpectedly or fail into wrong place. So we can see some bugs in a video game. This example of this. Errors are compounded in situations where two freely moving objects approach each other, which with an accuracy exceeding that which the physics engine can calculate. This can lead to an unnatural accumulation of energy in the object, and due to rounding errors, which begins to shake violently and eventually smears the objects. Any type of freely moving complex physical objects can demonstrate this problem, but it's especially susceptible to the effects of high voltage chain links and wheeled objects with an actively physically bearing surface. So on next slide, on the slide, you can see the classic example of a physics engine. First object without physics. Second, with gravity, but without any collision. Third object have gravity and collision detection, but without rigid body dynamics. and fourth object have all of these powers. There are usually two classes of physics engine, real-time and high precision. The mechanism of high precision physics require more computing power to compute very precise physics and are commonly used by scientists and computer animated films. Real-time physical mechanism used in video games and other forms of interactive computing. It's used for simplified calculations and reduced accuracy to calculate the time so that the game reacts at the appropriate speed for game. This slide is examples of scientific engines. One of the first general purpose computers was used as a very simple type of physics engine. It was used to develop ballistic tables to help USA military calculations with the artillery. The results were calculated only once and entered into printed tables. Next is more interesting is game engines. It's this use in most computer games, processor speed and gameplay, because processor speed and the gameplay more important than simulation accuracy. So these engines work not so accurate. This leads to development of physics engines that produce real-time results, but reproduce real-world physics only for simple cases, and unusually with some approximation. Most often, modeling is focused on providing an approximation that is correct from the point of view of perception, and not on real modeling. However, some games engines, such as Source, use physics in puzzles or in combat situation, so it requires more precise physics. So that, for example, the momentum of an object can topple an obstacle or lift a sinking object. Sometimes some form of limited hydrodynamic modeling is provided to simulate water and other liquids, as well as streams of fire and explosions in the air. So I choose this theme because I work with numerical equations and with and I love games, so I think this theme is good for me. So that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, but well, I think the more precise is the model, the more resources it needed.
Yes, you're right.
So it seems, yes, the result is beautiful, but that's the problem with the calculations. So you need to study mathematics and to simplify the differential equations that derive the dynamics of these objects, and in order to simplify the calculations. There is some tricks in theory of differential equations how to simplify the models, how to because, well, everything that moves, it is described by differential equations. So yes, it's all about mathematical modeling.
Yes.
Well, okay, I'm very far from programming, so I can't add something to you. Well, okay, thank you. Have you any questions more? If not, thank you. Thank you, and see you on, I don't remember, maybe not Monday. So check the timetable.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.